Ever get that feeling? Like the internet is reading your mind. You're browsing for like one very specific thing and then suddenly, bam, ads for it are everywhere. It's just me.
Well, today we're diving into the system that makes that happen. But with hopefully way less tinfoil hat conspiracy vibes, it's called programmatic advertising. And honestly, it's way more fascinating and less Big Brother-ish than it sounds. We're using this awesome primer from Inkbot Design to guide us. They're a branding agency, and they just published this on September 17th, 2024.
And the reason you should care, even if you aren't running a multi-million-dollar ad campaign, is that this impacts everyone, both how businesses reach us and how we experience the internet on a daily basis. They actually use the phrase digital matchmaker in this document, which I thought was kind of brilliant. So instead of setting up romantic rendezvous, it's connecting businesses with potential customers, like a supercharged algorithm-powered Cupid for your shopping cart.
Precisely. Inkbot uses some great imagery throughout this piece, Puppet Master being another one that comes to mind. But to put it simply, programmatic advertising is about automation and data. It's the behind-the-scenes system that decides incredibly quickly which ads to show you as you're browsing online.
Right. They talk about how old school advertising was like throwing spaghetti at the wall and seeing what sticks, hoping your ad just happened to land somewhere your target audience might see it. Programmatic flips the script entirely.
Yes, and the key here is efficiency. Inkbot highlights how programmatic uses real-time data analysis to optimize ad performance. Imagine this. You own a vintage camera shop, and you're running an ad. Programmatic can actually track things like which websites people visit before clicking your ad, what they click on, even how long they spend looking at that 1970s Leica on your site. Then it uses that info to adjust who sees the ad, what they see, and when they see it to get you the best results possible.
So it's like having a whole team of digital marketers constantly analyzing and tweaking things behind the scenes. But instead of humans, it's all powered by algorithms. To understand how this all works, Inkbot uses this great analogy of an orchestra to break down the programmatic advertising ecosystem. And every orchestra needs its players, right? So first, you've got your advertisers, the brands trying to get your attention. Then there are the publishers, like websites and apps, who are essentially selling ad space, kind of like digital real estate.
Think of it this way. You love catching up on current events on a news website. Someone has to pay for the journalist, the web hosting, all of it, right? So they sell space on their site to advertisers. That's the publisher's role.
Then you've got these other groups working behind the scenes, DSPs, SSPs, ad exchanges, and DMPs, just your typical everyday acronyms.
Right, let's demystify those a bit. Imagine walking into a fast-paced auction, but instead of bidding on a vintage painting, you're vying for the chance to show your ad to a specific kind of person online. That's what demand-side platforms, or DSPs, do for advertisers. On the flip side, you have supply-side platforms, or SSPs. If the advertisers are at the auction, the SSPs are the ones presenting the items up for bid. Publishers use SSPs to put their available ad space up for sale to the highest bidder.
So where does the actual buying and selling frenzy happen? This is where it gets really interesting.
The ad exchange. This is the bustling marketplace where the DSPs and SSPs go head-to-head armed with their algorithms and data to battle it out in milliseconds. It's like Wall Street, but for ad space, and it's happening constantly all across the internet.
And then there's the DMP, the brains of the operation, as Inkbot calls it. What's happening there?
Think of data management platforms like massive libraries, but instead of books, it's information about your online behavior. What you click on, what you search for, what you buy, all of it gets collected and analyzed. This data allows advertisers to target you with incredible accuracy and tailor their messages to things they think you'll be interested in based on your past behavior.
Okay, so we've got the orchestra assembled, all the players are in place, but what makes them actually play? What gets me is, just how much is happening behind the scenes that we never even think about.
Yeah.
It's like this whole other world operating at lightning speed while we're just trying to, read an article or shop for shoes online.
It's true, and it's only getting more complex and sophisticated as technology advances. But speaking of different approaches, Inkbot outlines a few distinct flavors of programmatic advertising, each with its own unique characteristics. We've already touched on real-time bidding, or RTB, which is all about those rapid-fire auctions happening in milliseconds. But let's move away from the Wild West of open auctions and step into the more exclusive realm of private marketplaces, or PMPs.
Ooh, PMPs. Sounds fancy. Like a secret society for advertisers.
In a way, it is. Inkbot describes it as a marquee ball where you need an invitation to even get in the door. Essentially, PMPs are where publishers, those who have ad space to sell, offer their premium inventory to a select group of advertisers. Think high-profile websites, specific sections of popular apps, places where they want more control over which ads appear.
So if I'm a brand that wants my ads to appear alongside high-quality content and reach a specific engaged audience, PMPs would be the way to go.
Precisely. The example Inkbot uses is a publication like the New York Times using a PMP to offer premium ad space to brands that align with their values and readership. It's a win-win. Publishers maintain control over their ad inventory and ensure brand safety, while advertisers get access to a more curated, receptive audience.
Makes sense. Now, what about programmatic direct? That sounds pretty self-explanatory.
It is, relatively speaking. Think of it like booking a hotel room directly through the hotel's website instead of using a third-party platform. With Programmatic Direct, advertisers and publishers cut out the middleman, the ad exchange, and make one-on-one deals for ad space at a predetermined price. No auctions, no bidding wars, just a direct agreement.
So if I'm a brand launching a new product and I want guaranteed visibility on a specific website, Programmatic Direct would give me that control.
Exactly. Inkbot gives the example of a company like Apple using Programmatic Direct to secure a prime ad spot on a tech review website leading up to a product launch. It's all about predictability and ensuring your message appears in the right context.
Okay, so we've got PMPs, which are invite only, and Programmatic Direct, which is all about one-on-one deals. What about preferred deals? How does that fit into the mix?
Inkbot positions preferred deals as a sort of hybrid approach, blending elements of both Programmatic Direct and RTB. It's like getting early access to a sale. Publishers using preferred deals can offer certain advertisers a first look at their premium ad inventory before it goes up for grabs in the open RTB market.
So I get to browse the racks before everyone else and snag the best items at a potentially better price. I like the sound of that.
Exactly. Advertisers can snag a preferred deal at a set price, or, if they decide to pass, it goes into the wider pool of RTB inventory. This offers both flexibility and a level of control, especially for brands looking for specific placements or audiences.
They use luxury fashion brands as an example here, right? Like if I'm selling high-end handbags, I wouldn't want my ads popping up on just any random website.
Precisely. Context is everything, especially for brands that rely heavily on brand image and association.
Okay, so we've covered the main players in this programmatic orchestra, the lightning-fast auctions, and now the different flavors of advertising it offers. But stepping back for a second, why should someone listening to this care? What are the big picture benefits of programmatic advertising, both for brands and for us, the users?
That's a great question, and Inkbot does a good job of highlighting those key advantages. First and foremost is precision targeting. We touched on this earlier, but it's worth emphasizing. Programmatic allows advertisers to get incredibly granular with their targeting, going far beyond basic demographics like age and gender.
Right, they use that memorable example of left-handed cat lovers who like jazz.
Exactly. And that level of specificity, while it might sound a bit creepy at first, can actually be incredibly valuable, not just for advertisers, but for users as well.
Because I'd rather see ads for things that actually interest me, even if it's based on my slightly unusual love of vintage cameras.
Exactly. It's about relevance. And when ads are more relevant, they're more likely to be engaging, which is beneficial for everyone involved. The second major benefit is cost effectiveness. With traditional advertising, you're often casting a very wide net and hoping for the best. But with programmatic, you can target your spending much more effectively, meaning your budget goes further.
So it's a win-win situation, at least in theory. Advertisers can reach the right people at the right time, and we, the users, are less likely to be bombarded with irrelevant ads for things we'd never buy in a million years. But it's not all perfect, right? Inkbot also mentions some challenges with programmatic advertising.
You're right. Like any powerful tool, programmatic has its potential downsides. One of the biggest concerns is ad fraud.
Ad fraud. Like, what does that even mean in the context of online advertising?
Well, whenever there's money to be made, there will be people trying to game the system. In this case, it means bots posing as real users to generate fake ad impressions and clicks. Essentially, advertisers are paying for traffic and engagement that isn't coming from actual humans.
So it's like those click farms you hear about, where people are paid to sit there and click on ads all day. But with bots, it's even more automated and harder to detect.
Exactly. It's a serious issue, and the industry is constantly working on ways to combat it. But it's a game of cat and mouse.
And then there's the issue of brand safety, which I imagine is a major concern for companies that have spent years, even decades, building a specific reputation.
Absolutely. As much as programmatic allows for targeted placements, there's always a risk of your ad ending up next to content that could damage your brand's image. Imagine a family-friendly brand finding their ad displayed alongside a controversial news article or a piece of user-generated content that goes against their values. It's a brand manager's worst nightmare.
Definitely. And that ties into the whole issue of transparency, which I know is something a lot of people are concerned about when it comes to how their data is being collected and used online.
You're right. Inkbot refers to this lack of transparency as following a recipe written in invisible ink. The programmatic supply chain can be complex, with multiple intermediaries involved. It's not always clear where an advertiser's budget is going and how much of it is actually reaching their target audience. There's a lot happening behind the curtain, so to speak.
So if I'm a brand that's new to all of this, it sounds like choosing the right partners, asking the right questions, and really understanding the intricacies of the programmatic landscape
Yeah.
are essential to ensuring my ad dollars are being spent effectively.
Absolutely. And speaking of getting started, Inkbot provides some really actionable advice for those who are new to programmatic. And it starts with something surprisingly simple that many people tend to overlook: defining your goals.
It's like that old saying, if you don't know where you're going, any road will get you there.
Right.
Except in this case, you might end up somewhere you really didn't want to be.
Yeah.
Like blowing your entire marketing budget on a campaign that reaches like the wrong people entirely.
Exactly. Inkbot is really big on understanding your audience. And not just on a surface level. They say it's not enough to just target, people who like coffee. You need to go deeper. What kind of coffee do they drink? When and where do they buy it? What are their other interests? That's the level of detail that allows you to tailor your message effectively and connect with the right people.
So using my vintage camera obsession as an example, again, it wouldn't be enough to just target photography enthusiasts.
Ah.
I bet you could segment that group into those who shoot film versus digital, those who collect antique cameras versus like the latest models, even those who are more into street photography versus portraiture.
Precisely. And the beauty of programmatic is that it allows for that level of granularity. You can get incredibly specific with your targeting, so you need to do your homework and come armed with those insights.
It's like that scene in every spy movie where they're trying to like crack a code or pinpoint the villain's location.
Yep.
You need all the data points to solve the puzzle.
I love that analogy. And speaking of data, once you've got a handle on your target audience, the next step, according to Inkbot, is choosing the right demand-side platform, or DSP. Remember, that's the platform advertisers use to manage their campaigns and access the ad exchanges.
Right, so it's kind of like choosing the right tool for the job.
Exactly. Inkbot actually compares it to picking the right car.
Right.
Do you need a nimble little sports car for navigating city streets?
Okay.
Or a rugged SUV for off-road adventures? Each DSP has its own strengths and weaknesses. Some are more user-friendly for beginners, while others offer advanced features that appeal to seasoned pros.
So again, it comes back to understanding your specific needs and goals.
Absolutely. And once you've got your DSP sorted,
Yep.
you need to set a budget. The good news is that programmatic is very flexible in that sense. You can start small and scale up as you gather data and see what's working.
So you don't have to bet the entire farm on your first campaign.
Not at all. It's more like dipping your toes in the water before diving headfirst. You can test different strategies, see what resonates with your target audience, and adjust your budget accordingly as you go.
Which is a much less intimidating approach, especially for those of us who aren't venture capitalists.
Definitely. And here's something else Inkbot emphasizes that I think is really important. Even with all the data and technology in the world, you can't forget about the creative aspect of advertising.
Oh, interesting. So you're saying like a catchy jingle and a memorable slogan are still important, even in this high-tech world of programmatic advertising.
Absolutely. No matter how well you've identified your target audience, if your ad creative is boring, irrelevant, or just plain bad, people are going to scroll right past it.
Right, yeah. If it's not grabbing my attention, I'm gone.
Exactly. So it's not just about finding the right people. It's about grabbing their attention and making them want to learn more.
Okay.
Inkbot is a big proponent of A/B testing different regions of your ad creative. Headlines, images, calls to action, see what performs best. Don't just assume you know what will resonate with your audience. Let the data guide you.
It's like having a focus group at your fingertips. But instead of relying on like subjective opinions, you're getting real-time feedback based on actual user behavior.
Precisely. And that data-driven approach is what makes programmatic so powerful. But as Inkbot stresses, it's not a set it and forget it kind of thing. You need to be actively monitoring your campaign's performance, analyzing the data, and making adjustments as needed.
So it's an ongoing process of, like, fine-tuning, kind of like tending to a garden.
Hmm.
You plant the seeds, you water them, but then you need to keep a close eye on them. Prune back any dead leaves and make sure they're getting enough sunlight.
I love that analogy. It perfectly captures the iterative nature of programmatic advertising. It's not a one-and-done deal. You're constantly learning, adapting, and optimizing based on the data you're gathering.
Which sounds both challenging and rewarding at the same time, like you're this digital gardener nurturing these campaigns to grow and flourish.
That's a great way to put it. And speaking of flourishing, Inkbot wraps up this excellent primer with a few case studies that showcase the power of programmatic in action. They highlight how brands like The Economist, Kellogg's, and Netflix are using it to achieve some pretty impressive results.
What's interesting about those examples is how different they are. You've got a global media company, a food and beverage giant, and a streaming service, all using programmatic effectively, which just goes to show how versatile this approach can be.
Absolutely. Programmatic isn't just for big corporations with massive budgets either. Small businesses and startups can leverage it to reach their target audiences, often with a much higher return on investment than traditional advertising methods.
So what's the key takeaway here for our listeners? What do they really need to remember about programmatic advertising?
I think the biggest thing is that it's more than just a passing fad or a buzzword. It's a fundamental shift in how advertising works, and it's only going to become more prevalent and sophisticated as technology advances. By understanding the basic principles, choosing the right partners, and approaching it strategically, programmatic can be an incredibly powerful tool for businesses of all sizes.
It's about harnessing data and technology to create more relevant and engaging experiences for your audience, which ultimately benefits everyone involved.
Exactly. And who knows what the future holds for programmatic advertising? As artificial intelligence and machine learning continue to evolve, we can only imagine the possibilities. But one thing's for sure, it's going to be an exciting ride.
That's something for all of us to ponder. For now, we'll leave you with that thought-provoking note. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the fascinating and ever-evolving world of programmatic advertising.